The candlelight flickered across the elegant dining table, casting dancing shadows on faces I'd known my entire life. 25 candles blazed on the cake before my sister Victoria, each flame a reminder that this was her night, her celebration, her moment to shine. As always, I sat at the far end of the table, picking at my salad, trying to make myself invisible. It was a skill I'd perfected over the years, the art of fading into the background, of occupying space without drawing attention. But tonight, even that wouldn't save me. Everyone. Before we cut the cake, I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate with me, Victoria announced, rising from her chair with the grace of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. Her dress was stunning, a designer piece that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair fell in perfect waves, and her makeup was flawless. She was everything I wasn't. I felt it before it happened, that familiar tightening in my chest, the warning sign that I was about to become the entertainment. Victoria's eyes found me, and a small smile played at her lips. I especially want to thank my dear sister Emma for coming tonight. I know it must have been hard to find something appropriate to wear. The table fell silent. I looked down at my outfit, a simple black dress I'd bought on sale 3 years ago. It was clean, pressed, nothing wrong with it. But I knew what she saw. Someone who didn't belong. Someone who couldn't keep up with the family's rising status. I mean, look at her, Victoria continued, gesturing toward me with her champagne glass. It's like she raided a charity shop. Oh, wait! Emma, did you actually? The laughter started with my mother. She tried to hide it behind her napkin, but I heard it, that sharp, cruel giggle that told me she found Victoria's observation amusing. My father joined in, shaking his head with a mixture of pity and embarrassment. Victoria, don't be mean, Mom said, but she was still smiling. Though, honey, she turned to me, you really should make more of an effort. We have important guests tonight. The Hendersons are here, and Charles from your father's firm. I felt my face burn. Around the table, Victoria's friends, beautiful, polished people I'd never felt comfortable around, exchanged knowing looks. Some laughed openly. Others just stared at me with that mixture of pity and disdain I'd come to recognize all too well. I'm sorry, I whispered, standing up. I should go. Oh, Emma, don't be so sensitive, Victoria called out as I grabbed my coat. I'm just teasing. You know I love you. But I did know. I knew exactly what kind of love it was, the kind that enjoyed having someone to look down on, someone to make them feel superior by comparison. As I walked out into the cold October night, I heard the party resume behind me. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the sounds of people who belonged. The sounds of a world I'd never quite fit into. I'd always been the odd one out in my family. Victoria was 3 years younger than me, but you'd never know it from the way our parents treated us. She was the golden child, the one who'd inherited Mom's beauty and Dad's charm. She was the one who'd gone to the right university, joined the right sorority, dated the right men. She worked in marketing for a prestigious firm, lived in a trendy apartment downtown, and had a social media following that made her feel like a minor celebrity. I, on the other hand, had taken a different path. I'd gone to a state school on scholarships, studied library science because I loved books more than people, and worked at the city's central library. I lived in a tiny studio apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant, took the bus everywhere, and spent my weekends reading instead of socializing. To my family, I was an embarrassment, a reminder that not everyone in the family had made it. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had a secret. For the past 2 years, I'd been writing. Not just writing, but pouring my heart and soul into stories that explored pain, loneliness, and the quiet dignity of people the world overlooked. I wrote about library patrons who came in seeking not just books but connection. I wrote about the elderly woman who came every day to read the newspapers because her apartment was too lonely. I wrote about the teenager who hid in the stacks to escape his chaotic home life. I wrote under a pen name, E.J. Morrison. And 3 months ago, my debut novel, The Quiet Ones, had been published by a small independent press. I hadn't told my family. How could I? They'd made it clear they didn't value anything I did. My job was cute at best, pathetic at worst. My lifestyle was something to be mocked. Why would my writing be any different? But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. It started small. A few positive reviews on Goodreads. A mention on a book blog. Then a popular booktuber featured it in their monthly recommendations, and suddenly, The Quiet Ones started climbing the charts. Within 6 weeks of Victoria's birthday party, my book had hit the New York Times bestseller list. I stared at my laptop screen in my tiny apartment, unable to believe what I was seeing. There it was at number 7, The Quiet Ones by E.J. Morrison. My book. My words. My heart laid bare for the world to see. My phone rang. It was Sarah, my editor at Meadowbrook Press. "Emma, have you seen it? Have you seen the list?" Her excitement crackled through the phone. "I'm looking at it right now," I whispered. "This is incredible. And that's not even the best part. We've had 3 major publishers reach out about your next book. There's talk of a film adaptation. Emma, you need to get an agent. This is bigger than any of us anticipated." The next few weeks were a blur. I signed with one of the top literary agents in New York. A major publishing house offered me a 6-figure, 3-book deal. Film rights sold. Foreign rights sold. Suddenly, my quiet little book about quiet little people was being translated into 17 languages. And through it all, I said nothing to my family. I went to work at the library every day, rode the same bus, lived in the same tiny apartment. I wasn't ready yet. I needed to understand what this all meant, to figure out who I was becoming before I let them in. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in December. I was shelving books in the biography section when my phone buzzed. "Is this Emma Morrison?" a professional voice asked. "Yes. This is Catherine Chen from The Morning Show. We'd love to have E.J. Morrison on our program next week to discuss The Quiet Ones." The segment would air nationally and... "Wait," I interrupted. "How did you get this number? How did you know E.J. Morrison and Emma Morrison are the same person?" There was a pause. "Your publisher provided your contact information. Is there a problem? We were told you'd agreed to start doing media appearances." Sarah had convinced me that it was time to step into the light, to own my success. But I'd been thinking of small bookstore readings, maybe a podcast or 2. National television was something else entirely. I need to think about it," I said. "We're offering a full segment, Emma. 20 minutes. This kind of exposure could push your book to number 1. But we need to know by tomorrow." That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the framed photo on my shelf. It was from Victoria's college graduation. In it, she stood between our parents, all 3 of them beaming. I was off to the side, half out of frame, as if whoever took the photo hadn't quite wanted to include me. I thought about that birthday dinner, about Victoria's mocking words, about my mother's laughter, about the way I'd slunk out into the night, feeling small and ashamed. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. "I'll do it," I said. "The morning show. I'll do it." The segment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The morning show sent a team to do a pre-interview and B-roll footage. They filmed me at the library, talking about how the building had inspired much of my work. They filmed me in my tiny apartment, surrounded by books and my old laptop where I'd written every word. "This is perfect," Catherine said during our prep call. "The contrast between your humble circumstances and your extraordinary success. Viewers are going to love this. It's a real Cinderella story." I didn't tell her that I didn't feel like Cinderella. Cinderella had wanted to go to the ball. I'd spent years trying to convince myself I was fine without the ball, fine being invisible, fine being forgotten. But maybe it was time to stop being fine with being forgotten. The Monday before my appearance, I did something I'd never done before. I called my mother and invited myself to dinner. "Oh," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "Well, I suppose that would be all right. Victoria's coming over too. She just got a promotion at work, so we're celebrating." Of course they were. "That's wonderful," I said. "I'll be there at 7. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. This was it. This was the moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating. Tomorrow morning, my face would be on national television. My name would be everywhere. There would be no hiding anymore. But tonight, one last time, I would be Invisible Emma. The disappointment, the joke, the one they laughed at. One last time. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 7 p.m. Victoria's car was already in the driveway, a sleek BMW she bought with her promotion bonus last year. I pulled up behind it in my 15-year-old Honda, The one with the dent in the passenger door and the check engine light that had been on for 6 months. Mom answered the door, and I saw the quick flash of assessment in her eyes as she took in my appearance. I was wearing the same black dress from Victoria's birthday party. I'd done it deliberately. A private joke, though no one else would understand the punchline yet. "Emma, sweetheart, come in," she said, kissing my cheek. "Victoria's in the living room with your father. We're having champagne to celebrate her promotion to senior marketing director." I followed her into the house I'd grown up in, the house that had always felt more like a museum of my inadequacies than a home. Every corner held a memory of falling short, of not being quite good enough. Victoria looked up from the couch when I entered, and I saw it, that familiar mixture of surprise and disdain that I was there, taking up space at her celebration. "Emma," she said with exaggerated enthusiasm. "What a surprise. I didn't know you were coming." "I invited myself," I said simply, accepting the glass of champagne Mom pressed into my hand. "Well, isn't that nice?" Victoria said. She turned back to Dad. "As I was saying, the promotion comes with a 20% salary increase and a company car. I'm thinking of trading in the BMW for something even better." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Dad said, beaming. "We're so proud of you." I sat in the chair by the window, the same chair I'd always sat in, slightly removed from the circle of conversation, present but not quite included. Dinner was the same as always. Victoria held court, talking about her important clients, her exciting projects, her influential friends. Mom and Dad hung on every word. I ate my chicken and nodded when appropriate. Then, as dessert was being served, Victoria turned to me. "So, Emma, how's the library? Still stamping books and shushing people?" She laughed at her own joke. "It's good," I said quietly. "You know," Mom interjected, "the Hendersons' daughter, Emily, just made partner at her law firm. She's only 32. The implication was clear. Look at what someone your age has accomplished. Look at how far you haven't come." "Emma's happy with her choices," Dad said, but there was pity in his voice. "Not everyone needs to be ambitious." Victoria leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "You know what, Emma? I've been thinking about that night at my birthday party. I felt a little bad about the comment I made about your dress." My heart began to race. "I just want you to know," she continued, "that I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just think you could make more of an effort, you know. Presentation matters in life. It's probably why you're still stuck in the same job, the same apartment. People judge you by how you present yourself." Mom nodded sagely. "She's right, Emma. I've been meaning to talk to you about this. Maybe if you invested a little more in yourself, better clothes, maybe some highlights, joined a gym, you might find better opportunities coming your way. Maybe even meet someone nice." I set down my fork carefully. "Better opportunities?" "Well, yes," Mom said. "I know the library makes you happy, dear, but you're 28 now. Don't you want more out of life? A real career? A husband? Children?" This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I could feel it building in my chest. Not anger, exactly, but something clearer, stronger. "Truth. What if I told you," I said slowly, "that I already have more?" Victoria laughed. "More what?" "More books to shelve." I pulled out my phone and opened my email. There at the top was a message from my agent with the subject line, "Film deal finalized, $2.5 million. I handed the phone to my father. He looked at it, confusion crossing his face. "I don't understand. What is this?" "It's an email about the film rights to my book," I said. "My novel, The Quiet Ones by E.J. Morrison." "That's me. I'm E.J. Morrison." The silence that fell over the table was deafening. Victoria snatched the phone from Dad. Her eyes scanned the screen, growing wider with each line. This is a joke, right?" "It's not a joke," I said calmly. "I wrote a book. It was published 6 months ago. It's currently number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. It's being translated into 17 languages. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to be on the morning show talking about it." Mom's hand went to her mouth. "You wrote a book?" "I've been writing for years," I said. "Every night after work, every weekend. I poured everything into it. All the loneliness, all the feeling of being invisible, all the quiet dignity of people who get overlooked. It resonated with people. Millions of people. Victoria was frantically typing on her phone. I watched as she pulled up the New York Times bestseller list, as she saw my book there, as she clicked through to the reviews, the awards, the accolades. "This can't be real," she whispered. "You're a librarian. You wear cheap dresses and take the bus." "I am a librarian," I confirmed. "I love my job. I love helping people find the books that will change their lives. And yes, I wear cheap dresses and take the bus because I've been saving my money. Because unlike you, Victoria, I don't need expensive things to feel valuable. I don't need other people's approval to know my worth." I turned to my parents. "You spent my entire life making me feel small. Making me feel like I wasn't good enough because I didn't want the things you wanted. Because I chose quiet dignity over flashy success. Because I found meaning in helping others rather than impressing others." "Emma," Dad started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. Tomorrow, when you turn on the morning show, you're going to see me. And you're going to hear me talk about my journey. About being the invisible child, the disappointment, the one who wasn't worth celebrating. And you're going to hear me thank the experiences that made me who I am, including the humiliation at Victoria's birthday party." Victoria's face had gone pale. "You're going to talk about, on national television?" "I'm going to talk about the truth," I said. "About how some of us find our voices not despite being silenced, but because of it. About how being invisible taught me to see the invisible people around me. About how your mockery taught me empathy." I stood up, leaving my dessert untouched. "Where are you going?" Mom asked, her voice small. "Home," I said. "To my tiny apartment above the Vietnamese restaurant. To prepare for my interview tomorrow. I just wanted to tell you all in person before you saw it on TV. I thought I owed you that much." "Emma, wait," Dad said, standing. We didn't know. We had no idea you were doing something so extraordinary." I supplied. "No, you didn't know. Because you never asked. You never wondered if there might be more to me than what you saw on the surface. You never considered that maybe I was living exactly the life I wanted, just not the life you wanted for me." Victoria's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her expression crumbled. "Oh my God. My friends are already texting me. Someone saw your interview announcement. They're asking if you're my sister. If I'm the sister in the book, who?" She trailed off, and I saw the realization dawn on her face. She'd read the synopsis. The book was about a woman who finds her voice after a lifetime of being dismissed by her family. A woman who transforms her pain into art, her invisibility into power. "I never used your real names," I said quietly. "I never intended it as revenge. I intended it as truth. As my truth. But yes, Victoria, parts of you are in that book. Parts of all of you are. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourselves why." I didn't wait for their response. I walked out of that house with my head high, got into my dented Honda, and drove back to my tiny apartment. When I got home, I found a text from Sarah. "New York Times just called. You're #1 tomorrow. Congratulations, Emma. You've done it. #1. The top of the list. The pinnacle of success in publishing." I thought about texting my family, sharing the news. But then I realized something I didn't need to. I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd spent years craving their approval, their recognition, their love. But I'd built something better. I'd built a sense of self-worth that didn't depend on anyone else's opinion of me. The morning show interview was everything I'd hoped it would be and more. Catherine Shin was warm and insightful, asking questions that let me share not just my story, but the story of all the quiet ones, the overlooked, the underestimated, the invisible. "You've said that your family didn't know you were writing this book," Catherine said. "What was it like when you finally told them?" I smiled. It was liberating. I spent so many years trying to be what they wanted, trying to earn their approval. And when I finally stopped trying, when I finally embraced who I actually am, I found something more valuable than approval. I found myself. "And your sister, the one who inspired the character of Charlotte in the book, have you spoken to her since the book's success?" "We've had some conversations," I said carefully. "I think my success has been difficult for her to process. But I hope that someday she understands that this book isn't about her. It's about me. It's about finding my voice." After the interview aired, my phone exploded. Text messages, emails, calls. But the one that mattered most was from a number I didn't recognize. Emma, it's Victoria. I watched the interview. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I was jealous. I am jealous. You've always had something I didn't. You knew who you were. I've spent my whole life performing, trying to be perfect, and you just existed. Authentically. I resented you for that. I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. Thank you for saying that. I don't know if we can fix what's broken between us, but maybe we can start building something new. 3 months later, The Quiet Ones hit #1 globally. The film went into production with an A-list cast. I quit my job at the library, not because I didn't love it anymore, but because my career as an author demanded more time. But I still volunteer there twice a month, reading to children and helping patrons find their next favorite book. I moved out of my tiny apartment, but I didn't buy anything flashy. I bought a modest house with a large study where I could write, a house with big windows that let in light, a house that felt like home. My relationship with my family has improved, though it will never be what it might have been if they'd accepted me from the start. Mom and Dad are proud now, but I can see the regret in their eyes when they look at me. They know they missed out on knowing the real me for 28 years. Victoria and I meet for coffee sometimes. We're building something, not the sisterly bond we might have had, but something honest, something real. She's in therapy now, working through her own issues with perfectionism and performance. She told me once that reading my book made her cry because she recognized herself in Charlotte and hated what she saw. I was so mean to you, she said, tears streaming down her face. I made your life hell because I was afraid of being ordinary. And you were never ordinary, Emma. You were extraordinary, and I was too blind to see it. My second book comes out next month. It's called The Last Laugh, and it's about a woman who spends her life being underestimated until she proves everyone wrong, not through revenge, but through the quiet, persistent power of being true to herself. On the dedication page I wrote, "For everyone who's ever been told they weren't enough, you are. You always were." Sometimes I think back to that birthday dinner, to Victoria's mocking voice saying, "Look at her," to my parents' laughter, to the way I felt so small and insignificant. I think about how I wanted to disappear, to never have to face their judgment again. But I didn't disappear. Instead, I transformed. I took all that pain, all that invisibility, and I turned it into something beautiful, something that touched millions of lives, something that mattered. And on the nights when I'm writing in my study, when the words are flowing and I'm deep in a story about someone the world has overlooked, I sometimes smile to myself, because they were right to look at me that night. They just didn't understand what they were seeing. They saw someone small, insignificant, worth mocking. What they didn't see was someone who was watching, learning, and waiting for the moment when she would finally show the world exactly who she was. And when that moment came, I didn't shout or gloat or seek revenge. I simply stood in my truth. And that, I've learned, is the most powerful thing any of us can do.